On Friday night, the New York Mets went from nearly having their comeback victory of the season to then having what I think was their most brutal loss so far.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. I've been covering the New York Mets on this show since the 2019 season. This is the only podcast that covers the Mets 7 days a week throughout the regular season, and it is days like this that are why I can't just wait until a Monday morning show to break down what happened on Friday night when we get a game like that was so memorable, so frustrating, so agonizing. I can't leave Mets fans just out on a limb for a whole weekend. That's why I do this show 7 days a week, because last year and even in years past, but particularly last season, I started doing this show every single day, Monday through Sunday, because there was always something. There was always something to talk about with each game, and I would find myself constantly deciding to record Saturday shows last minute because the Friday night game was so good or so bad. Last year, it was actually just so bad in May when I started doing this thing every day. And now it's, I think the way we'll continue to do this show moving forward, because it's the only way to properly cover a baseball season, to cover every single game. And what a ridiculous, absurd, frustrating, I don't even know how many adjectives I can throw on this game on Friday night. It's like a West Coast game, because I'm recording this right now. It's 2:45 in the morning. That's because this game stretched well past 1, and then I'm doing the prep for the show. And here we are after I've gathered my thoughts and unprocessed 5.5 hours of baseball. Or I guess it was probably 3.5 or whatever it was, but there was a 2-hour rain delay in the middle of the game. You might have forgot that this game on Friday night actually was started by Griffin Canning and Clayton Kershaw, but they basically don't even factor into what happened here. I guess Canning did, because some runs were left on the board that ended up coming in once the rain stopped. All of this began in the third inning. We'll go from there. Before the rain, Griffin Canning had given up a single, got a pop out. Then he walked Shohei Ohtani before Mookie Betts hit a fly ball to right center field. Tyrone Taylor and Juan Soto collide. Taylor, a great piece of concentration to somehow focus and catch the deflection barehanded to get an out. There was a little bit of debate, because then they throw the ball in and get Michael Conforto out because he left too early on the tag, till we learn of a new rule that we never see come into play, where basically if a ball or a runner is supposed to run on first contact with the glove, because if they were allowed to, the outfielders juggle the ball, they could, to try to force these double plays. So Michael Conforto goes from being out to safe, because by rule, since that ball hit the glove, even though it was a collision, it still counted as first move off of contact with the glove that allowed Conforto to advance. So that extends the inning. So the Mets could have gone from that inning being over. And the only reason why I mentioned that play, for one, it was just a wild play, but also because it would have been an inning-ending double play. Instead, there's runners at second and third with 2 outs for Freddie Freeman, who gets into a 3-1 count before the sky opens up and they have to put a tarp on the field and go through an hour and 48-minute delay or whatever it was. And then Max Kranick comes on to pitch, and he resumes the count with Freddie Freeman at 3-1. He walks him. So now you got bases loaded, couple outs, and the Dodgers do some nice 2-out hitting, couple ground balls that found holes. They're able to score a few more runs. 1 run had already scored on the weird sac fly play. And regardless, you get to a point where now it's 3-0 Dodgers. Mets score their first run, bottom half of the inning, as Brett Beatty hits a home run. Next inning, Starling Marte bunts for a hit, advanced to second as they made a bad throw to first trying to get him. And then Juan Soto rolls one over to advance into third. Pete Alonso hits a sacrifice fly. Another weird play there, because Marte got thrown at the plate, but there was an obstruction play called where Max Muncy walked into his line of sight, which delayed Marte from getting going towards the plate. And apparently another rule is you cannot do that. You cannot obstruct a base runner's view of the fly ball, preventing them from getting a good jump on the tag play. Ironically enough, it happened again later in the game, but wasn't called. I don't know if it wasn't called because it wasn't obstruction, because the umpire didn't see it, or because the run scored anyway. Who cares? Just a weird game. All of this wildness has happened by the fourth inning, and those two plays that you never see before are an inning apart, but also 2 hours apart, because that's just what this game was. Absolute madness. And I respect any and everyone that followed along for every pitch like I did, because it was just a journey. Kranick, able to get through that inning, gets through the next inning. He got 4 outs. Jose Butto starts the fifth inning, gets Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman out, so you think the hard work's done. Then he falls apart, walks Will Smith, hits Teoscar Hernandez with a pitch, gives up a base hit to Max Muncy that scores 1 run, another base hit to Andy Pages that scores another. But from that point on, the Mets put the clamp on the Dodgers for long enough where they should have won the game. Jose Castillo comes on, bails Butto out of that jam by striking out Michael Conforto left on left, stayed on and looked great. I think the Mets might have found somebody here with Jose Castillo. A little side note in the midst of the game recap. He has a really deceptive delivery, the way he kind of like tucks his arm and hides his arm. It's a really interesting left-handed reliever, and I don't understand why his numbers have not been better up to this point. But since he's come to the Mets, he's been really good. Stays on, has a 1-2-3-6 inning, got Mookie Betts and Shohei Ohtani out in that inning. He then strikes out Freddie Freeman to start the seventh before handing it over to Ryan Stanek, who gets 2 outs in that seventh inning. Genesis Cabrera comes on, another lefty for the Mets that pitched well out of the pen. 2 scoreless innings in the 8th and the 9th. All of that brings us to the bottom of the 9th inning. Now, I want to first say, before we talk about the rally in the 9th, that since Starling Marte's bunt hit in the 4th inning, the Mets had 2 base runners throughout the rest of the game until that 9th. Tyrone Taylor hit a leadoff single in the 5th. The Mets did nothing with that. And Francisco Alvarez drew a leadoff walk in the 8th. Mets did nothing with that. Everybody else got out. All right, so that brings us to the 9th inning. This is the lone rally of the game, and it was an awesome moment until it wasn't. Starling Marte got a base hit. Juan Soto flew out. Pete Alonso drew a walk, and that put 2 runners on for Jeff McNeil, who had entered the game after Brennan Nimmo exited with a neck injury, neck soreness. We'll talk about that in the final segment today. This is a jam-packed show based on just one crazy game. But McNeil gets the biggest hit of the night, rips one into the right field corner for an RBI triple, scoring both Taylor and Alonso and setting himself up as the tying run to come across and score and send the game into extras. Now, it's important to note that that triple came off of Tanner Scott, one of the toughest left-on-left matchups in the game. This was the guy that closed for the Marlins last year and then went to the Padres at the deadline, signed a huge contract with the Dodgers. He is absolutely nasty, and that was a great piece of hitting by McNeil. Also, Marte before that, Alonso to draw the walk, had a great at-bat. So the Mets did a really good job in the 9th inning against Tanner Scott, but all it did was prolong our suffering, because after Jeff McNeil's triple, Tyrone Taylor ripped a base hit to tie the game. I'm fired up. I'm feeling good. I think the Mets are absolutely going to come back and win this game. But what followed after was a devastating series of events, some horrible at-bats, blown opportunities that turned a great comeback into just an absolutely disgusting finish, and a game that won't soon be forgotten. A brutal loss for the Mets. I want to talk about what happened the rest of that 9th inning and the extra innings as the Mets got opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to try to win the game. They just could not get another run across. Go through all of it in just a minute. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing. Every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. And it's not just the NBA action. You want to look at the Mets or just your MLB action at large, you can do that as well. Maybe look at David Peterson and how many outs they'll give you in the game today. I wonder if they'll change the line before the game starts, because David Peterson, after what the Mets bullpen had to do on Friday night, he's probably going to have to go, 8 innings. So I would take the over on whatever they put on the amount of outs he's going to get in this game. But if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. And if it wins, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. If you're watching on YouTube today, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Help us get closer to our next goal of 14,000 subscribers. So I left off in the 9th inning. Tyrone Taylor had gotten that base hit that drove McNeil to tie the game at 5-5. There's one out in the inning. Francisco Alvarez flies out, but then Brett Baty gets a base hit. So you got runners at the corners. 2 outs. Who's coming up to the plate? Luis Angel Acuna. Brett Baty steals or advances on a defensive indifference, whatever you want to call it, but there's runners at second and third. First base is empty, which means all Acuna has to do, hit a soft ground ball and beat it out, and the Mets can win. That is the only way I thought they were going to win. I just didn't even envision a world where Acuna got a base hit. I had no faith in him. I wanted the Mets to pinch hit. I really did. I don't know who would have pinch hit because Vientos was scratched due to an abdomen thing. Nimmo had already been pulled from the game, so you're looking at Luis Torrens and Jose Azocar basically, but I would have taken Torrens in that spot, although he blew it later in the game. We'll get to that in a second, but Acuna just had no chance. And it was a bad at-bat. 2 pitches nowhere near the zone, so he's sitting 2-0. I'd give him the take sign, and granted, the pitches that he swung at were not that far out of the zone, but they were out of the zone. If you get one of those, I don't know, maybe you're close to drawing a walk and whatever. It doesn't matter. He swings at a couple pitches that were close, gets to an even count. Then he swings at one of his eyes or tried to check his swing, but clearly didn't check his swing and strikes out. Brutal at bat. 10th inning, the Mets get a miracle or a couple miracles. Edwin Diaz comes in a pitch. He hits Freddie Freeman. He walks Will Smith, so you got bases loaded, nobody out. Teoscar Hernandez hits a ground ball to Pete Alonso. Miracle number 1, he makes a good throw home. So you get the force out at the plate. That's out 1. Then you get a ground ball up the middle that hits off the mound. It just ends up going perfectly to Francisco Lindor, who's able to touch second base, throw to first, get a double play, and the Mets get out of it. They go from bases loaded, nobody out, to somehow not giving up a run. After coming back from down 3 in the 9th to facing bases loaded, nobody out, and somehow not giving up a run to the Dodgers, you have to win that game in the bottom of the 10th inning. You have to. Especially because Acuna made the last out, so you got Luis Angel Acuna on second base, your fastest runner. Maybe have him try to steal third. I mean, I get it. Lindor led off the inning. And so the thought was, okay, Francisco Lindor is going to get a base hit. But it's pretty wild that you couldn't get Acuna to third base because even if you bunt there, I mean, you need a run. I know it's Lindor. And I know Starling Marte's batting second instead of Soto. Otherwise, maybe they do bunt, which is maybe Marte's a better bet to get a ball in the air or in a drawn in infield to get a base hit. Regardless, Lindor strikes out. And that's the biggest thing, right? Lindor has to, at least, you're trusting him, bare minimum, to get the ball on the ground to the right side to get Acuna over. But instead, he strikes out. Starling Marte gets hit by a pitch. Then Juan Soto rolls one over, but when you already have one out, that doesn't really do anything for you. And then Pete Alonso gives one a ride, but it's caught, and with 2 outs, fly out does nothing for you. So you blow an opportunity there. It's just so frustrating, though, that you had Acuna on second base and you can't get him in. I know it's risky to steal third. I know it's crazy to bunt with Lindor, but it's hindsight that I'm playing here. But you got to just win the game. And that's a perfect opportunity. And then Reed Garrett does amazing. And in consecutive innings, strands the ghost runner, gives you 2 more opportunities where all you have to do is get the ghost runner in. They couldn't do it. Jose Azocar pinch runs for Alonso in the 11th. And I remember thinking to myself as soon as they did that, why does it feel like this is going to come back to bite the Mets? It shouldn't. That's not a bad managerial decision to put your speed in there. But also, I guess in that spot, if I can't criticize not bunting Lindor, I can certainly criticize not bunting with Jeff McNeil. Because Jeff McNeil, one of your best bunters, either him or Starling Marte. I would trust McNeil to get a bunt down. Instead, they let him swing away because, hey, he's the one who got the big hit. But guess what? He hits a soft line out. So you bring the speed in. But at that point, if it's, I guess it was the score on a base hit. But if you're going to play small ball in a tie game, play small ball. Lay the bunt down. Get Azakar to third. And then maybe you win. But instead, you probably won't even then, though, because what ended up happening was they intentionally walked Tyrone Taylor to get to Francisco Alvarez, which tells you everything you need to know about how Francisco Alvarez is swinging the bat, or at least swung the bat in this game. He strikes out. Brett Beatty draws a walk, loads the bases for Acuna. Acuna gets to a 3-1 count, hits one hard, but right at Kike Hernandez. And that makes for an easy out. In that spot, you almost want Acuna hit a soft ground ball, although there was force outs everywhere, so they probably would have been able to find it out. Regardless, another blown opportunity. Again, I told you, Garrett 2 times in a row was able to strand the ghost runner. So you got another opportunity in the 12th. Runner on second base. That's how it works. Just get the guy in. Lindor's intentionally walked. Marte does bunt. Nearly beats it out, which would have won the game, but not that it would have won the game on that play, but if there's bases loaded, nobody out with Juan Soto up, I think he probably comes through. Instead, after review, he is ruled out. First base is empty, so they walk Soto, but at least you got Pete Alonso. Oh, no, wait a minute. No. You brought in Jose Azakar for Pete Alonso because you assumed you were going to score in that spot in the inning prior. And now here it all comes back around. And instead of Pete Alonso, it's Luis Torrens who was subbed in for Jose Azakar to play first base. And Torrens hits a double play ball. Hits the ball hard to Kike Hernandez, right? And they turn 2. Blown opportunity. Sack fly, you win. Bases loaded, 1 out. Only thing you can't do is what he did, hit the ball on the ground or strike out. But even striking out's better than hitting the ball on the ground in that spot. Huascar Brazaban comes on, gives up a double that scores a run, base hit, puts runners at first and third. Then there's a sack fly double play as the runner from first was stealing and Juan Soto catches the fly ball, able to double him off first. I saw somebody commenting on social media, or maybe it was on YouTube, I don't even know, but someone said, why didn't Soto throw it home? The chances of Juan Soto gunning down that runner at the plate was pretty slim. I was fine with him getting the out at first since he actually did get the out. And you're able to get back into the dugout with the chance to score 2 to tie it again. But you know what was going to happen from there. The Mets go down in order in the 13th, and they lose in brutal fashion, 7-5. The Mets were 2 for 14 with runners in scoring position. They had 7 hits in a 13-inning game. The offense has just been brutal. And you can point a lot of fingers. I know Juan Soto is going to get a lot of flack because he's the big name. He doesn't have the equity of the fan base. He's supposed to be better. He's the $765 million man. I get it all. Here's what I'll say, though. Francisco Lindor and Juan Soto together combined to go 0 for 9 with 4 strikeouts. Lindor had 3 of those strikeouts. The rollovers aren't much better, but I would have taken a rollover from Lindor in extra innings. That is a really brutal at-bat that Lindor had in a big spot. Could have completely changed the game. Pete Alonso goes 0 for 3. Give him a little bit of a pass because he did have a sacrifice fly, but still. You look at Francisco Alvarez and Luis Angel Acuna. They combined to go 0 for 10 with 1 walk. That walk, Alvarez's walk, in the 8th inning. Jeff McNeil got 1 hit, but he never struck out, and that 1 hit was a massive triple. Tyrone Taylor went 2 for 5 with a walk. Brett Beatty went 2 for 4 with a walk. 2 for 4 with a walk and a homer. And Starling Marte went 2 for 4 with a hit by pitch. So where do you pin the blame on this game? I'm sorry. It's got to fall on Soto, Lindor, and Alonso. And I do have a little piece on Acuna for the next segment because I think he looks lost right now, and the Mets might have to start to think about making a move there. But Lindor, Soto, and Alonso. That trio since the Subway Series is 11 for 79 in 7 games. 11 for 79 for those of you counting at home. That is a 139 batting average from your top third of your lineup. It's going to be really hard to win games if those 3 guys aren't hitting. And it shouldn't just fall on Juan Soto's shoulders where you give Lindor and Alonso a pass, because all three of those guys have just sucked for a week. That's it. It's cut. It's dry. It's simple. That's what's going on with this lineup. Sure, you could talk about runners in scoring position. You could talk about Acuna, Alvarez, all these different guys. Those three guys are the engine of your offense. If they're hitting 139 collectively, you are going to have a bad lineup and you're going to lose games, because those are also the guys that get more opportunities with runners in scoring position. They're at the top of the lineup, and the lineup turns over. They get those opportunities. And they've been just blowing it time after time after time. And this game is a perfect encapsulation of all the frustration of the past week and change. Brutal, 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 brutal. Final segment. Going to talk about the injuries to Nimmo and Vientos. I have a little something on Luis and Acuna. And then we're just going to try to figure out how the Mets are going to survive on Saturday after every single guy in their bullpen pitch. So we'll go through all of that in just a minute. If you're an everydayer that's always tuning into the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets Insider. It's our texting service where you get updates from me anytime news breaks in the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime, take part in our Locked On Mets signed photo giveaways, and get the live graphics sent to your phone each day so you know who's in the starting lineup without ever having to go on social media. If you want to be a Locked On Mets Insider, find the link in the episode description or go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. First things first, let's talk about the injuries. And I do want to mention something that I'll talk about more on tomorrow's show, which is that Frankie Montas is going to begin a rehab assignment. I was going to forget if I don't mention it now. We'll talk about whatever happens in that rehab start on tomorrow's show. I think he's pitching in Brooklyn on Saturday. So that is that. Let's talk about Nimmo and Vientos. Vientos was in the starting lineup. He was going to be playing third with Brett Beatty at second. He was a late scratch due to some soreness in his abdomen. Brandon Nimmo starts the game in left, does make a catch going into the wall. He said after the game that sometimes it's with travel, but basically this is the same neck injury that he had back in 2019. If you remember, it was early in the season. I want to say it happened on a dive. He tried to play through it, had terrible numbers, sat for a couple months, came back in September and was awesome, has pretty much been awesome ever since, and has been remarkably durable ever since, even going through a neck, a knee, plantar fasciitis last year. He didn't seem overly concerned, but it's definitely a day-to-day thing, and I would not be surprised at all if you don't see Brandon Nimmo again in this series, because it's a neck injury, and you just don't want to risk it. So the Mets might be playing a man short for a little bit. I don't know if they will stick him on the IL. Typically, with a veteran like Nimmo, they'll usually wait on it and see for a couple days because they don't want to lose him. I don't know. To me, with the state of this team right now, I would almost just see who shows up in worse condition on Saturday and maybe put one of those guys on the injury list, Nimmo or Vientos. But they're saying it's day-to-day, so I imagine it will be day-to-day, and the Mets won't make a roster move. If they do make a roster move, I'd have my eye on Jared Young. Jared Young is on the 40-man roster. For those of you who aren't familiar with him, the Mets signed him during the offseason. He was a Cubs prospect at one point. Then he ended up in the Cardinal system last year, put up great numbers in AAA the last couple of years. Middle of the season, he goes to play in the KBO, has a ton of success there, comes back, gets a major league deal with the Mets, but he does have options. So that's why he's been in Syracuse all year. He can come up at any time and get sent back down. He's, again, on the 40-man roster. So far this season, he got a little bit of a late start. He's hitting .272 with a .393 on base and a .533 slug in 26 games. Has a .926 OPS, has hit 6 home runs with 23 RBIs, and 4 of those 6 home runs have come in his last 10 games played. This is a guy that can play in the corner, so first base, third base, left field, right field, even second base. It's not like he's going to be a great defender anywhere, but he has a lot of versatility to him. So if you need to get somebody, I would go grab Jared Young. Whoever needs to go down, if it's Nimmo or Vientos, he would cover you, because you could either play him at second base, keep Beatty at third, have McNeil in left. If both of these guys are day-to-day, or one of them's day-to-day, the other one goes on the IL, he could play third base for you. If it is Vientos out, he can DH for you and be the left-handed complement to Starling Marte as a DH. There's a lot of ways you can use him, and he is swinging a hot bat. people are going to clamor or have been clamoring for Drew Gilbert or Ronnie Mauricio. I spent yesterday's show talking about Mauricio, so you can get a full segment on that if you go back and didn't listen to it. He still needs a little bit of time before I think he's ready to come up and make an impact. But Acuna, his clock is ticking, and that flip might happen sooner than later, but I don't think it's going to happen for at least another couple of weeks. Drew Gilbert, I think a lot of people are getting fooled right now because they're looking at his numbers for the season. Maybe they're just clicking his name on MILB.com. Oh, wow, Drew Gilbert has an 802 OPS this season. He's in AAA. Why not call him up? He's one of our top prospects, left-handed center fielder. It'd be great to have him. He could replace Nimmo, right? Well, here's the deal. Yes, Drew Gilbert has an 802 OPS this season, but he's got a 717 OPS in AAA. Those numbers are buoyed, and they'll continue to be buoyed all year by 6 great games playing in low A, where he was squaring up against teenagers on rehab to start the season. His actual number is 717 OPS. He's not swinging a good enough bat to get the call now. He's also not in the 40-man roster. So I don't see the Mets adding him to the 40-man roster probably at all this season unless he forces their hand. He's not forcing their hand yet. So I don't think Drew Gilbert's an option. And again, go back and listen to why Mauricio is probably not an option if you go back to yesterday's show, though they could actually bring him up if it was due to an injury. I talked about in yesterday's show how he's not even available to come up because he was assigned to AAA on May 17th. But regardless, I don't see it. If they decide to not make a roster move, Jeff McNeil has to get more at-bats. He's giving you really solid at-bats right now. He should be in there every single day. And Brett Beatty should be in there every single day. And then you figure everything else out. Marte, right now, if both Vientos and Nimmo are out, he should be the DH. So the way I think the Mets should play the rest of this series, assuming they are down Nimmo and Vientos, you put McNeil in left, you put Beatty at third, probably Acuna at second, and you DH Marte. But I will say I wouldn't mind at all going to get Jared Young. Not necessarily to replace Acuna straight up. I think you still need his versatility and speed right now. But if you're going to stick somebody on the IL, Jared Young covers up a lot. If you aren't, then you roll with Acuna for now, but hopefully you get Vientos and Nimmo back in the lineup soon, and you really relegate Acuna to a bench role because he's been lost in May. He's hitting 208, 264 on base, 229 slug. That's in 48 at-bats. He has 11 strikeouts to 3 walks. In April, he hit 308, got on base at a 357 clip. Only slugged at a 385 clip. Hasn't slugged all year, but at least he was getting on and using his speed. He walked 5 times, struck out 13 times. I think right now Acuna is showing that he is just not there offensively. He needs some AAA seasoning. He needs to play every single day. And I don't think that you can play him every day at the big league level when you have Jeff McNeil at times on the bench when Acuna's in the lineup, or Mark Vientos on the bench when Acuna's in the lineup. It just does not make sense. They need him right now for his defense, his speed, and versatility. But when Jose Siri is ready, that's when you can definitely make a move because you would get that speed component back. I know Jose Azocar can give you some of that, and maybe that is enough of an argument to just make the switch and bring Jared Young up and send Acuna down. But I don't know if they're going to make that move. I just think you're getting to a point where Acuna is playing himself into a demotion. And if you give it a couple more weeks, Ronnie Mauricio might be ready. That's why I think you might be better off waiting, because if you wait 3 weeks, you might have Jose Siri back to replace Jose Azocar. Although we still haven't seen Jose Siri on a rehab assignment. It's just apparently he's been doing baseball activities. So I'm wondering when that's going to be able to clear up where he is able to come back. But even regardless of Jose Siri, if you give Mauricio 2 more weeks and he's swinging a decent bat and he's able to play on a consistent basis, I'd consider making the move, honestly, just because Acuna's been bad. And again, if you're going to keep him on the roster as your defensive replacement, as a speed guy off the bench, he can play that role. And if he ends up back in Syracuse by the middle of June, he's still going to have plenty of real estate in the season to develop as a hitter and to, potentially earn his way back to be a key cog on a playoff roster, because he does bring a lot of value to your roster. but he can't be your second baseman right now. That's got to be Jeff McNeil or it's got to be Brett Beatty. And the lineup tonight does suggest that they were going to have Beatty at second and Vientos at third. So you have options other than Acuna at second. His at-bats have been brutal. Tyrone Taylor's been awesome too. So you don't need to get Jeff McNeil in center field to get his bat in the lineup. You can just play him at second and start Tyrone Taylor every day because he's swinging a great bat. So that's where I'm at with this lineup right now and things that can change. That is a move, an adjustment that they can make to the lineup. But the bigger one still, going back to last segment, is just getting Lindor, Soto, and Alonso to hit. Because until they hit, the team's not going to be able to do well when it's just Tyrone Taylor and Jeff McNeil at the bottom of the lineup making things happen. It's not going to work. You're not going to win a lot of games that way. So they need those three guys to step up. But one switch they can make to improve their lineup is to bench Acuna right now. He's just not swinging a good bat. Now, when it comes to this game, I honestly don't know what the Mets do. It's going to be David Peterson versus Tony Gonsolin. Every single pitcher in the Mets bullpen did throw in this game. I will say Ryan Stanek only threw 6 pitches. Edwin Diaz only threw 12 pitches. Reed Garrett got 6 outs on 17 pitches. And all these guys had a day off on Thursday. So there is a world where you just get through it and you just don't worry about it and don't bring a fresh arm up and you roll with what you got and you see what happens. I don't think Kranick would pitch because he threw 28 pitches. I don't think Buda would pitch because he threw over 25 pitches. I think he did throw exactly 25 pitches. But they could certainly use a fresh arm just in case. Typically, teams are not going to go into a game without an option, some type of a long man that can bail you out. So if you're going to grab a long man, who is available? Well, Blade Tidwell and Brandon Waddell have not pitched this week. So you could get either of those guys who are on the 40-man roster to come up and just give you a long man option. I'd love to see Tidwell because it's always fun to see the top prospects. I would think it would probably be Waddell who would get that nod first just because it is a tough spot to put a pitching prospect when he's more used to or is completely just a starting pitcher for the most part. So to have him come up on short notice, I don't think they would do that. So my guess is if they do make a move, it's Waddell coming up. They could also bring up Justin Hagenman, who pitched 3 days ago. Now, here's another, you know what? I just thought of a David Stearns move that we very well could see. Let's just say that you have Brandon Nimmo show up to the ballpark and it's like, yeah, we should probably put him on the IL for 10 days. What the Mets might do is the same IL trick they did last time. Option Max Kranick, bring up Brandon Waddell. Then after the game, you play a man short on the bench for whoever is not available, whoever is destined to go on the IL between Nimmo and Vientos. I think you stick one of them on the IL and you bring Kranick back up. Or you just flatly option Kranick. He's got to sit out for 2 weeks, basically. It's a 15-day assignment into AAA. And they could be trending towards that anyway. So that's the other option the Mets could do here. They could bring up Waddell to be the long man for this series, option Kranick, and then you're probably going to call up Paul Blackburn this week anyway. You can keep Jose Castillo and Jesus Cabrera in your bullpen for 15 days. So you have a longer time to make that decision on which of those guys you like more. If you like them both, maybe Max Kranick, unfortunately, is stuck in Syracuse. If one of those guys struggles, you decide which one you want, you could bring Kranick back. That's probably where the Mets at. If someone is going to go down, it's going to be Max Kranick because he has the options. So does Huascar Brazaban, or the option. He's in an option year. Huascar Brazaban also is in an option year, but he's been amazing, and he's too important to your bullpen, so you're not doing that. If you were to send down, so to speak, Jesus Cabrera or Jose Castillo, those guys are out of options. You'd have to DFA them. You could lose them. You'd have to expose them to waivers. So that's where I think Kranick is the move today. How they make that move is going to be interesting. I just thought of that loophole that they already used this season. I wouldn't be surprised if they go back to it if one of those guys is destined for the IL, Nimmo or Vientos. And again, worst case scenario, you got to do what you got to do. You send Kranick down, you bring up a fresh arm, and you probably continue to do that for a little bit, cycling fresh arms into that spot until Blackburn's, going to come in on Tuesday or Wednesday. And that's it. That's what you do to get through here. And really the hope is David Peterson can get you through at least 6. And then if it's a close game, you do still have the ability to go, Stanek, Garrett, Diaz, if you really want to. 2 innings is tough to go 2 innings back-to-back for Garrett, but he only threw 17 pitches. So we'll see what the Mets decide to do, how they get through this game. It's going to be a wild rest of this series after both of these teams just really tax their pitching to get through this marathon of a game. But we'll see. We'll see what happens next. I'm going to try to wrap up this show and get to bed before 5 o'clock in the morning. So that's going to be all for today's show. I appreciate all of you for tuning in. As always, thank you all for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listener, your first watch every day, not for your second watch. Head over to YouTube and check out the first ever 24/7 streaming channel that covers everything in the world of sports. We'll talk about Locked On Sports Today with our local host from each team, league-wide hosts from each league. Find Locked On Sports Today streaming 24/7 on YouTube.